Appreciate you joining us today. We are going to talk about email marketing list hygiene, be fresh and clean in 2020. And with that, let me introduce today's speakers, and I am one of them. My name is Hank Hoffmeyer. I am a speaker, author, and also I work for client success for Campaigner, and I've been with the organization for 10 years, and I've been dubbed the digital marketing infotainer because I like to make marketing fun and successful. Today, I'm joined by Brendan Matthews. He is a deliverability expert, and he's one of today's speakers as well. He's very serious, he's very knowledgeable, and he's going to be the one to knock some sense into all of our heads today. And hopefully, I can just make it more fun and appealing for us. Just kidding, we're both fun, and we should be able to explain list hygiene in a way you can understand it and know the best practices so that your emails get into the inbox and that they're being engaged with. Brendan, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time. I know we're all working from home these days. It's a little challenging, and it's just great to hop on and I can see you, and it's great to talk to some folks outside my own house.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It is good to see some adults outside of the house.
Awesome. Well, with that, we're going to get started. Again, Paul saying hello. Yeah, let us know where you're from. If you want to use the question feature there, just let us know where you're from. I like to see where in the world people are dialing in from, or using the web to see our webinar today. It's awesome to see people throughout the world. All right, what we're going to do today is we're going to cover list hygiene. And what that means is cleaning your list so that you make sure that you have a list of engaged subscribers, and it also helps your email deliverability. We're going to discover some of the core concepts a little bit further. And then we're going to talk about how can list hygiene help you as an email marketer. We want to make sure that you are doing the right things so that you get better results. And I see some folks from Dallas, Vancouver is in the house. Thank you for joining us today. We also have best practices, and I already mentioned that. We're going to go over what do you need to be doing when it comes to list hygiene? How should you be doing it? We'll answer those questions as soon as we get into the webinar. And then last, and most important in some ways, is the Q&A section. So we'll jump in, answer your questions. That's why we're here, because we want to engage with you. This time is really for you to inform you, but also help you with any needs that you have. We have Park Ridge, Illinois, Raleigh, North Carolina, which is where I'm from. I'm actually in Saxby, if you know where that is. Toronto, Miami. We have another person from Miami. Thanks for joining us today. It's awesome to see everybody here. All right, list hygiene in its essence is the act of cleaning or removing inactive email subscribers from your list to improve email deliverability into campaign engagement. And it's actually a better statement than the way I said it earlier, and that's what you should remember: better deliverability and more engagement with your subscriber base. So what I want to do now is just start off with, I have a couple of questions that I prepared for Brendan. And what I want to do is, since he's more of the expert on deliverability, I want to ask him these questions and see what his answer is. So Brendan, the first question is, how does list hygiene fit into your business? Now, I mean, your business, like if I owned a business and I did email marketing, how does it fit into what I'm doing as a business owner or marketer?
Well, essentially, it's keeping your list with active subscribers, making sure you remove opt-outs, things like that, bounces. And what that does is essentially it means that the people that want your messages are going to get it. These are the people that are going to open, click back to your website, make a purchase, things like that. So I can't think of a way that it would negatively impact personally. Basically, what it's going to do is maximize your results, and whatever your KPIs are, it's going to keep them where you need to be, assuming everything else works good with your content and opt-in policies and things like that. But it should be something that is a regular part of an email marketing program.
Now, this next question can probably cause a healthy debate, but is it the most important item for email marketing? Is list hygiene the most important thing I need to be doing?
I would say it's about a 1A, 1B. 1A is obviously making sure that people want your emails and the content is relevant to them. But then 1B is list hygiene and making sure that your list is healthy, because if it's not, even the people that do want your email may have a hard time getting it based on a bad or aged, older, or God forbid, dirty list.
I think a lot of marketers de-emphasize list hygiene, and they say, I have X amount of subscribers, 10,000. I don't want to remove them because at some point they're going to buy from me. Therefore, it's not important to them. But what we're going to talk about today is the reasons why you want to make sure you have clean data coming into your email program or email platform, as well as keep it healthy, trim it, get rid of that dead weight. And we're going to talk about the benefits of doing that. This way it is that 1B, right? It's not number one, but it's at least 1B. Sometimes if you make it 1A, I'll be happy too. So Brendan,
Right, and it's,
yeah, good.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, no, good. Finish up
I
your
was just
thought.
going to say, you know, some of the reticence towards really good list hygiene is very understandable, and it's what it takes to get an opt-in, what that lead cost is via pay-per-click ads, even regular traditional print media or radio, television media, those types of things where it's less measurable. But there's definitely a lead cost associated with every quality opt-in, and I absolutely understand that for some folks that can be considerable. So, you know, it's always a balancing act, is where I was going with that.
Definitely. And we're getting some great questions, and some of them are related to what we're talking about now. But if you have a question, why not throw it into the questions box? Because we're going to get to that at the end of today's webinar. This way you don't forget about it, and we want to make sure we answer that. And we have a couple good questions already. But Brandon, this is one we get all the time when we talk about deliverability or even email marketing in general is how often should I clean my list?
And I kind of touched on that a moment ago. I think that, you know, in an ideal world, to have a really awesome email program where you're getting great inbox rates, great delivery, list hygiene should be a regular part of what you do. You know, we're lucky in that, you know, in 2020 now, there's a lot of ways to automate this via your email marketing platform so that it's more of a set it and forget it. In the past, it took a lot of, you know, manual data analysis, looking at reports over X number of months. But now a lot of email programs or email software programs like Campaigner give you this functionality built in. So it's something where you can build your strategy and then turn it on, and it kind of takes care of itself. That way you're doing the things that you need to run your business, and list hygiene can be automated and in the background for you.
Awesome. Yeah, and it depends on how often you send, how big your list is. We're going to
Right.
talk about that a little bit more. So keep those questions coming. I see another one. We're actually going to get to the topic of hard bounces soon. I see that question. So, Brendan, I'm going to hand
Mhm.
it over to you and let you talk about some of the symptoms when it comes to email marketing and when you need to clean your list. So, I'll bring up the first one here for you.
Sure. So declining open rates is a big indicator of possible list health issues, especially if you're not having issues with spam complaints, hard bounces, things like that. Um, and you know, you're not doing anything technical where your IPs are an issue. And as long as you're with either a reputable server of your own or a reputable email marketing software program, um, you know, you can mostly eliminate technical issues for declining open rates. And as you know, if your content hasn't changed, you're still kind of doing the same thing, but you notice those rates are just declining incrementally. That's usually a list hygiene issue. You know, for the past 8 to 10 years, most of the major email box or inbox providers, rather, like Gmail, Oath, which is Yahoo, AOL, Verizon, they've incorporated user engagement into their spam filtering. And what that means is if somebody doesn't open your email for a period of time, depending on how often you email them, even if they don't take any action of unsubscribing or marking as spam, what's going to happen after a while of ignoring your emails and just deleting them is that ISP is going to filter them into the spam folder. They take the opinion that if it's not a sender that's being engaged with, it's no longer relevant. So we're going to put it to junk to stop cluttering up their inbox. So you can see that if that happens for one user, not a great thing, but not a huge impact to your list. But if that happens to quite a few users and you're not paying attention to your metrics to identify those, that can actually have a snowball effect on you. The more users that stop opening, the less relevant you are to the ISP. That means even folks that open occasionally or every so often may start getting their messages to spam. New subscribers will get their messages to spam instead of the inbox. And that can really harm you as that continues, because if those folks, that first message is going to spam and they're not marking it as not spam, which is a huge, huge positive indicator for you as a sender, then the spam filter, which is just, you know, a machine, it takes the stance of, okay, working as designed. So, you know, not paying attention to that down the line can really, really impact you for old subscribers, current subscribers, and worst, new subscribers. especially when we go and talk back about that lead cost and what it took to get that subscriber opted into your list. You definitely want to make sure that at least the first message gets to where it needs to go. That way they can open it and start that engagement process with you, and that inbox can recognize you as a relevant sender.
And Brandon, we're getting a little bit of reports that you're a little bit choppy and slightly, ever so slightly garbled, a tiny bit. Maybe if you want to just disconnect from audio and come back, and then we'll see if that helps. And I'll go over the next bullet while you're doing that.
Sure thing. Sorry about that, guys.
One of the other things that you can look at is if you're seeing elevated bounces, a lot of your emails are bouncing. What you want to do is take a look at that, see why, see if they're a hard or if they are a soft bounce. And that might be a reason for you to go ahead and clean your list for other reasons than people not opening your emails. Take a look at those and diagnose which it is. A lot of soft bounces, a lot of hard bounces. We're going to cover each of those, and I'm going to let Brendan talk about that because he's very knowledgeable. And just take a look at your bounces. Make sure that they're healthy. Soft bounce really is something that doesn't harm you as much, but Brendan might say, well, you got to be careful. And hard bounces are something that actually do hurt you. I don't want to steal his thunder, and it's on another slide, so we'll go over that. I see he's popping back in, so we'll just wait and see when he's got audio. Just chime in when you think
How's
you do.
this sound?
All right. I think you actually sound better, which is awesome. You were starting to sound a little robotic, and a couple people said it's understandable, but then some people said not so much. But I think you sound better. So I was just talking about take a look at your bounces, and if the rate starts going up, and take a look at soft and hard bounces. I didn't talk about what they are yet because I know that's your domain and that's actually on another slide. But let's move on to elevated unsubscribes and complaints.
Sure. So spam complaints, we'll start with that. They are a negative indicator and a negative data point for you as a sender for the ISP that you're sending to. So one spam complaint, not horrible, but if you see a lot of spam complaints, what most providers want to see is a ratio of one spam complaint to every 1,000 recipients, or 0.1%. If you're above that, that's going to run into some issues with the overall health of your list, because that negative reputation that's associated with more spam complaints than what the recipient server wants is going to paint you in a negative light. And what that can do is, for your current subscribers, if they're engaging, they're going to still continue to receive your messages. If they're a less engaged subscriber, again, that's going to harm your reputation, probably lead those messages to spam. And definitely for those new subscribers, when you have elevated spam complaints, first messages are more than likely going to go to the spam folder. So then that leads to, you're getting these contacts, you're building your list, but none of these folks are seeing your message. So is that list really a healthy big list, or should it be examined? And should we work on some of those things to improve the reputation of it?
Just remember, folks, these are the three things you need to be looking at a consistent basis. Look at your open rates, trending lines on those. Are you going up? Are you going down? Look at those bounces on a per email basis, ongoing as well. And then those unsubscribes and complaints. Is it telling you a story? Is it your content? Is it something technical? You want to look at these, identify what it is. This way you can fix them. And those are things outside of list hygiene that you need to be doing is identifying those problems and fixing them. All right, let's move on to what's involved. And the first one, Brendan, is going to be bounced addresses.
Sure. So these can come in two different flavors that Hank mentioned. We've got soft bounces and hard bounces. We'll start with the hard bounces. Number one, those are the ones that are most damaging. Those are emails sent to inactive or non-existent mailboxes. A server and a spam filter interpret that as somebody who isn't really in charge of their list or using a current or opted in list. So you absolutely want to limit those to acceptable numbers. Generally keeping that as low as possible, 1 to 2% if you can percent, even less. The idea is that if you're sending to addresses that don't exist, you don't have a good list. If you're sending to addresses that used to exist, then you're not properly managing the list. And there are issues that go along with that too, and that if you have a ton of hard bounces in a row or on a single send, that could lead to you getting your domain blacklisted. Just whether or not the list is legitimate or not, it could be a very old list that, let's say you found people that purchased 5 years ago and it's Black Friday's coming up. Totally normal for somebody to consider, but you have to consider that how many of those email addresses are still real, given that the average lifespan of your typical free mail inbox, and even business inboxes now with the way people jump jobs is anywhere between 12 to 18 months. So a list that hasn't been sent to in 3 or 4 years could be just terrible for you from a list hygiene and sender reputation standpoint. And the few people that you would get to engage and ultimately, make a purchase or whatever, your call to action is, would be far outweighed by all of those bad addresses and the damage that they would do to your sender reputation in the meantime.
And we have some
Now, soft
slides
bounces
that are
are,
going to go into detail on these. So Brendan, don't go too far into each one of these.
oh,
We
you're
have
right,
slides
you're right,
for each one
you're right.
too.
Correct. I apologize.
No,
So
no,
let's
no,
get into
that's
errors.
okay. I just, I know we had some technical difficulties at the beginning before we even started, especially with some of the animations, which we fixed, by the way. But let's just kind of do high level. So you kind of covered the bounces, but we're going to go into detail of the types of those two shortly. So Brendan, now let's just tell them that there are errors, and then we'll look at the details on that.
Yeah. So anytime you do get a bounce, the nice part is that you're going to get, Hank, I hear an echo, I don't know, maybe it's speakers. But the nice part is that you're going to get a response onto why the message was bounced. Recipient servers aren't trying to trick you. They're going to tell you exactly why we won't accept the message. And in most cases, it'll be pretty informative. It's, this address doesn't exist. This address is no longer valid. From a soft perspective, it could be this inbox is full. We didn't like the content. We have a temporary issue, something along those lines. So there's a lot of different ones. And I think one thing I like to point out to people is that there are no standards with bounce code responses. Most people go by the standard that, a 550 response code is going to be a hard bounce, but we see 550 soft bounces all the time that are temporary. And, 4 dot something is supposed to be temporary. We've seen them as permanent bounces. So it's really up to whoever set up the recipient server and what kind of feedback they want to give. But on the whole, the error codes, or what we call non-delivery responses, are going to be helpful and informative and tell you why they're not going to accept it, and then tell you what you need to do to get it in.
Right. And errors, which we're going to go over, like transcription errors, typographical errors, and stuff like that. You want to take a look at those, and we'll explain where those come into play. And then also, we're going to talk about non-openers and how do they actually affect you. And they affect you more than you think. You think just having people that haven't opened an email a long time on your list is just there and you're just spending money because it costs you as a subscriber. That's not the case. It's actually detrimental. So let's actually get into the weeds here a little bit and Brendan, talk about what the actual hard bounce versus a soft bounce. And now we have hard bounce up. We'll talk about soft bounce next.
Yep, and I apologize for jumping the gun, everybody. I get excited about talking about bounces. It's fun to share knowledge. So yeah, like I was talking about earlier, hard bounces. These are the ones that are definitely damaging to you as a sender. If you're using an email service provider like Campaigner or somebody else, they do the job of removing hard bounced addresses from your list. The caveat to that is that they have to send to those addresses in order to identify them as bad. That's the only way it can be done. There are certain verification services that do a similar job of that, but they're not 100% accurate, and they can lead to inaccurate results, which could lead to damage to you as a sender. So it's hard for us to kind of recommend those types of services due to the inaccurate results that they've provided in the past. But essentially, hard bounce is an address that is no longer existent. It cannot accept mail because it's no longer there. Like I said, you want these off your list as fast as possible. If you're using an email provider, they'll remove it as soon as it hard bounces. If you're not, definitely pay attention to your bounce codes and get these folks off the list, because continued sending to them is going to hurt you and could lead to things like blacklistings, as I mentioned. Soft bounces. These ones, I guess the jury can be kind of out on whether or not they ultimately impact the sender. I have my own feelings that they do have an impact. We talked about removing non-openers from your list. Well, there are certain soft bounce codes, such as inbox full, that you may want to pay attention to, especially if you're seeing that consistently for specific contexts. Generally, that means that they've abandoned their inbox. It takes a ton of email to fill up any of the free email providers now. I think Gmail alone gives you like 5 gigabytes, which takes thousands and thousands of messages to fill up that storage. So if they're full and they're not making space and consistently soft bouncing for that,
then they may not hurt you because they're a hard bounce, but they're going to hurt you from the engagement standpoint in that they're a non-opener. And not only that, but the provider is saying, this person is not deleting mail, we can't accept mail anymore. Does it make sense for you to ignore that feedback from the provider when they're telling you, hey, this isn't a good address? It's almost, I would treat it as a hard bounce at that point because it's no longer capable of receiving mail. Then you have other ones that are a lot more innocent. Temporary server issues happen all the time. Relaying issues happen all the time because there's always, that's why IT teams exist, to troubleshoot those issues. So those are things you can't really solve, but if you see it happening again consistently for the same folks, it's not giving you any value to send to those contacts. And then you run into other items such as, reputation issues with the domain you're using. You'll see products like Mimecast who will allow their users to manually block the from address. You'll see bounce codes like that, like, you've been manually blocked, please reach out to the recipient and ask them to unblock you. And then there's more vague ones such as spam content. What that means is there's something contained within your message that the recipient spam filter found objectionable, and that's going to be words, less often, but more likely links and the reputation that those links carry, which is actually a big reason why a lot of email providers won't let you use link shorteners like Bitly, because those can be used by anybody and they're frequently used in malicious email to hide the ultimate destinations of where bad actors are going to send you. So reputation of the links in your email is important too, not just the reputation you have as a sender.
Awesome. It's a lot of great information. I know that we've got a lot of questions around this. Hopefully we can get to a lot of those soon. When it comes to hard bounces, they include existing and incorrect domains. You already mentioned this, and decommissioned email addresses. The example I always like to give is maybe I have an AOL email address and I stopped using it. I don't know who uses AOL. Well, actually, since I'm in the industry, I do, but I might stop using it, right? And AOL is going to ping me and say, do you want this email address? And if I ignore it, they're going to reclaim that and then deprecate it. So it'll no longer be available. And that can hard bounce at some point.
Correct, and that actually happens quite a bit with the free email providers. If you don't log in for, it depends on the provider, but X number of months with no logins, they're going to reclaim it. Danger of that is that they could then turn it into a spam trap after a period of time to catch folks who aren't using good list hygiene and examining soft bounces, examining hard bounces, and examining engagement.
Or maybe if you purchase the list, you might get some of those hard bounces, right?
Oh, that's pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah, so folks, if you see somebody out in the street, which you shouldn't these days, right, because we're self-quarantining, and they open up their trench coat and say, hey, I have a list of 10,000 subscribers for $10, just walk away from them and say, no, go and tell someone you trust, like us, about, tell us, hey, this guy's trying to sell me an email list. I don't know what to do. You don't do anything. You don't buy it.
Yeah, and it happens more than you think, those guys with trench coats and email lists.
Right, and I think we covered the negative effects it has on the email, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're ahead of the game here. Soft bounces, temporary issues. You already mentioned that, like full inbox, temporary service issues,
Right.
and may or may not have a negative effect on your email efforts. When we were planning this webinar, I actually didn't really think about what you were talking about, but that is true that because it's soft bouncing and if it's repetitive, that person's not getting your emails and not opening them, and it actually does harm you in that aspect, because not the actual bounce, but the fact that they're not engaging with your email. So I love that thought process on that.
And to take that a step further, let's take that spam content one that I talked about that was pretty vague. They keep that vague for a reason, obviously, because they don't want you figuring out their secret sauce and figuring out a way around it. They want you to send just quote unquote better email. Not paying attention to that and continuing to send when you're getting those types can definitely lead to you being blocked entirely at a provider, because they're saying, we don't like your messages, please change them. And if you don't change, then they'll take action and just say, we're done. So that's really something to consider too. It doesn't have an impact on you immediately, but long-term it can certainly have a pretty big one.
Right, and I think a lot of marketers just think they can go in, create an email and send it, and like actually what happens after the fact doesn't really matter, if people are engaging with it or not, if it's actually getting to them or not. It does. It means a lot. It's kind of being graded, and there's so many different things that go with email marketing strategy that there's the reasons why we do these webinars, and it's to educate you. And this might be just a beginning of where your knowledge starts with list hygiene, with bounces, with engagement. Stay tuned. We'll probably have some more webinars, and take a look at our YouTube channel. We have previous webinars that will probably be helpful too. All right. So what I want to do now is Brennan talked about some errors and we mentioned those errors. Let's talk about them in detail. So the first one is bots. And I know Brendan and I have a lot of discussion around bots. There was a client we were working with a couple weeks ago that had somebody develop a website for them and they manage it and they were getting these bot signups. In other words, it's a program that scours the internet, looks for a form, fills out the form with bogus information. Sometimes it's legit. It's like somebody else's email address and then that gets filled into that form and fills your account up with junk and you're sending to junk, or I'm sending to Brendan because that bot put in his email, but he never signed up for my emails. And he's like, well, I never signed up for this. And he's marking it as spam, right? So that's what bots are. And one of the best ways to combat that is going to be using the Google CAPTCHA. Add that to your forms and just make sure that people are verifying that they're not a robot. Because if you have these bots, and if you're targeted by a bot, it's hard to get away from them if you're not using something like Google CAPTCHA. And that is something you can add to the campaigner forms. Contact support if you need help with that, but you can add them to the forms. Transcription errors. Maybe you are at a trade show, conference, and you're having people write down their email address. And then when you get back, you're actually transcribing that into a spreadsheet or directly putting it into a campaigner and you make an error, right? And that's on that's your fault, right? Because you typed it wrong. So you might put AIL.com instead of AOL.com, and that might bounce. Or actually, I think there is AIL.com, so that might have been a bad example. AXL.com, you just mistyped it. So what will happen is that email will bounce. So just be careful if you're transcribing information. Invalid errors, that is just, it's an invalid email address. It just doesn't work. Maybe somebody used the and symbol instead of the at symbol. That would be an invalid email address. They forgot the dot for .com, so just be on the lookout for those. And then typographic, and then somebody actually types it wrong. Get?
.con is one we see all the time, like .com or any of those issues. Just to add that in, those are real good indicators. So definitely look for those types of things.
Bonus question for you, Brendan. So if I see Hank at xyz.com, is it safe for me to change it to .com? Because more than likely it is a .com.
I would say caveat emptor, proceed at your own risk, buyer beware.
But if you think, like if it's gmail.com, I think it's safe to change it to .com. But if it's a domain, you might want to be careful because it could be .co and they actually hit the end.
Right. I think it depends on how you collected the address. I mean, if it was somebody in store, a physical sign up and they were writing it down with a pen or a pencil, I think you're safe. If it came in digitally, I don't know.
Yeah, but if you think it's gmail.com, I would say that's safe. But if you don't know, don't mess with it. Just remove it.
Yeah.
The beauty is they can always come back and add it again. And then typographic would be somebody who actually just types their email in, fat fingers it. I do it all the time.
And if you do see errors like that, before adding them to your bulk mail list, you can always reach out to that individual with your own personal email and send them a one-to-one message. And if it comes back as non-existent, then it's bad. That won't hurt you as a normal, emailer with your regular inbox. So there's always, that as a method of verifying it.
All right, so what we're talking about today is making sure you're getting engagement, making sure that your emails are performing. So according to Litmus, 43% of Gmail subscribers click a spam button rather than unsubscribe from emails. And that's part of the reason you want to clean your list of people that are not engaging with your emails, because people are lazy. They don't want to scroll down to the bottom of the email to click on subscribe. They probably are going to hit the spam button at the top.
And just to chime in on that is because we mentioned Gmail. That's a really important metric to keep in mind because Gmail does not have a traditional feedback loop, which is what tells an email program that somebody marked as spam. They don't share that information unless it's in very high numbers, at which point they'll share a little bit of information so that you can take action on the list. But that's really important to mention because it has to be a very big issue at Gmail for them to reach out to your email provider and let them know about it. So really, really important to consider that stat there that almost half of their subscribers click spam rather than unsubscribe. So if you have non-openers on your list for quite a while, it's very possible that they're a non-opener because they marked your message as spam rather than just stopped opening.
No, that's a good point, and it's something we probably should have made a slide for, is the fact that most of the big email providers, they have this feedback loop where if somebody marks your message as spam, Campaigner will automatically remove it from your list and you won't email them anymore. Not the fact with Gmail. And actually what's interesting is most times if you mark a message in Gmail, do you notice that you still get the email and you might have to mark it a second or third time before it actually disappears from your inbox and goes to spam? That's important to note. And then also by them hitting spam, Campaigners doesn't know about that. And it's not just us, it's any email service provider. They're not going to know if somebody's hitting spam. They're just going to turn into somebody that's disengaged, which makes email list hygiene that much more critical.
Zombie subscribers.
Zombie. Yeah, I think I wrote a blog post about that. Talked about zombie subscribers, and I correlated that to they're Walking Dead pretty much. All right, so some more things to think about is better deliverability, and you get more reliable metrics. I always like to point out that if you remove the dead weight, your open rate automatically shoots up, right? Because you're comparing who you're sending to, and part of that is people that are not engaged with your emails, and it brings back down the percentage of people that are actually engaging. So if you clean your list first, send, you have a better representation of what your email open rate should be.
Exactly, and that's the reliability with the metrics like you talked about. Is your open rate really indicative of messages going to the inbox and being opened? If 20% are going to spam, then that's really not a measure that you can track, because all it does is make your open rate look artificially low. So your open rate can only be defined by messages to the inbox versus messages open, because mailbox providers disable all of the message tracking that would allow us to indicate an open.
So just think if you could take the percentage that you just said that are theoretically going to spam but not removed from your list, and add them to your and add that to your open rate, or actually help your open rate, it'll be so much better.
And just to point out a real world experience is that most folks, obviously that makes sense. You trim your list, you should have a higher rate, right? Because it's the way numbers statistics work. But I challenge folks after doing proper list hygiene to actually check not the rate, but the actual number of unique contacts opening. And in a lot of cases, after doing a good round of hygiene, you actually see more unique people opening your messages than you did before, not just a higher rate. So it's not just, fudging the numbers a little bit to make you look better. It's literally making you better.
Right. And I'm not going to go over these codes because you probably had time to read them, folks. Just basically, quality subscribers mean better engagement, better results, better ROI. And by cleaning your list, you're going to have, better deliverability rates. You're going to get into the inbox more and convert more is pretty much what Marketing Sherpa is telling us here. All right, Brandon, what we're going to do now is go over some do not use. So the first one is do not use purchased or rented lists. You want to elaborate on that?
Right. We talked about that a little bit earlier. From a purely selfish standpoint for you as the sender, they're not going to give you good results. These are people that didn't ask to be emailed by you. So what that means is you're sending spam. That's the definition of spam, is unsolicited bulk email. That's the selfish standpoint, and that these people aren't really, what you do get is a gift almost into the inbox. Sure, you can convert, cold calls are effective, but not bulk. In many cases and in many countries, it's actually illegal to do this, especially our friends to the north. They've got a great law called Castle, which they introduced in 2014, which makes it 100% illegal to send an unsolicited bulk message to Canadian residents. From a overall reputation standpoint, it can lead to you having high bounces because you don't know the age of that list. It can lead to having high soft bounces because that list has been sold so many times that the recipients have blocked most marketing email. And even worse, it can lead to you or your email provider being blacklisted for sending to those addresses that are either active and have complained about you, or some of those have been turned into spam traps through various spam anti-spam networks like Spamhaus or Spamcop. And when that happens, that's a big black eye to your email provider. And if they keep you around, then you're going to be on a pretty tight leash at that point. There's not any reputable inbox or email provider that I know of that allows the use of purchased or rented lists, specifically for that reason, for the damage that they cause the provider and the other customers using that provider.
Just don't do it, folks. What's a harvested list, Brandon?
Harvested lists, you're not buying them, but you may be going to, let's say, a state regulatory website and downloading a list of licensed professionals. It's publicly available, but again, it falls under unsolicited. You're harvesting publicly available data for your own uses, but when you add that data as a bulk email list, you are now a spammer. So you can reach out to those folks if they're publishing for contact, purposes. Reach out to those folks as an individual, whether that's a phone call or an individual email. But adding them to a bulk email list is definitely against all of the policies of any reputable email provider.
How about scraped addresses?
These I would avoid. That's not exactly a reputable way of gathering data. Scraping is basically having a way of identifying addresses that are across the web, whether that's, we see it a lot with whois data. So somebody registers a domain and there's certain programs and services out there that will scrape that data, daily of new registered domains and the contact info associated with them, and then sell that data or give that data away or use that data for their own purposes. But again, same with rented and harvested lists. Not only do email providers forbid it because it's literally spam, it's going to catch up with you sooner or later. And if you don't get blacklisted, you really will not get good email results from these. So they're just not in your best interests, even if you're not using a provider.
I love this next one because it comes up a lot, especially when I speak at conferences. Hey, I go to conferences. I'm at a trade show. I have a booth there. Am I able to use co-registration or third-party lists? In other words, hey, I'm at an expo and I have a table, and I was told I was going to get a list of all the attendees. I don't even have to have them come to my table. They're going to give me everybody's name and email address, and that would be co-registration. By signing up for our newsletter, you're going to get emails from all of our partners that are here today, all 100 of them. So why should we not use these co-registration or third-party lists? Or is there a way to actually tap into that if we wanted to see if it was something worthwhile?
I think that again goes to kind of harvested data too, and that it's unsolicited. You as the sender, that those recipients did not say, I want your email. In most cases, their information is provided as a condition of attending the conference. So, and I know that you can opt out of that, but a true email list should be opted into, not opted out of, because it's still, if you are not the business that they're explicitly giving permission to email, then you sending them bulk email, again, using an email provider and using a list base, is unsolicited, and that would make it spam. So again, that goes back to you as the business owner or in the sales department or marketing department, and taking that lead that you're getting that's being provided to you and doing something that is not bulk mail with it, but you can convert it to a bulk mail. Obviously, get in touch with the folks, send them an email from your inbox saying, hey, we really want to connect, blah, blah, blah. They visit your website, they can opt in there. But again, co-reg, third party, they're not opting into you. So the results you get from that are not going to be stellar. And from a permission-based standpoint, it's not a real explicit opt-in. So if those folks live in Canada or they're European citizens, that could really get you in some hot water and lead to financial difficulties in the forms of fines, which nobody wants to get.
What I would recommend is having the organizer send an email introducing you as their partner, and then have a link to a landing page or a form where they can actually opt into your emails. That'd probably be a safe way because they know that they signed up for the show, trade show, or whatever, the conference, and they're introducing you, and they can choose whether or not they want to opt in or get people to come to your table and use a tablet or something, or yours. If you say, hey, Brandon, can I scan your badge? I'm going to send you an email, and I hope you will opt in to receive my newsletter. Is that okay? By you saying that verbally and scanning their badge, and hopefully just say your brand name once or twice, because they're probably going to get 100 emails afterwards of people that scan their badges and say, hey, Brandon, I work with Campaigner. Can I scan your badge? What I want to do is send you some information about our products and services, because we had a great conversation today. Is that okay with you? The risk of them marking a spam is slightly less than them getting an unsolicited email, and at least you're getting their permission because they said yes, you can. If they say no, then don't scan their badge.
Exactly. And you can even go low tech and go to the old fishbowl, drop a business card, just put an index card in front that says join our email list, drop a business card, make sure that people know that they're doing it for that purpose and not to network with you personally, or work a deal with you personally. Make sure it's just explicit that, hey, we're gonna add you to our list, instead of I'm gonna reach out one-to-one and we want to connect and talk things through further. Right. Just be very clear about what you're doing.
Can you tell that I've worked a few conferences? All right, let's talk about things to be careful with. And one of those would be role addresses, right, Brennan?
Yes. In most cases, there's only a very few number of role addresses that are going to be legitimately opting in to a bulk email list. You might have an info at, a sales at, things like that. What you want to be wary of are other things, other role addresses on your list, like admin at, and those types of things. Those addresses are very protected by their owners. So if you're seeing them on your list coming through a form especially, I would be very concerned about the security of the form. Generally, when you see that type of stuff, it's because you're being attacked and the bot or bad actor person is trying to flood the inbox of that role. Usually, like I said, it's going to be an administrator or an anti-spam or abuse person. So just be wary of those and understand that a lot of role addresses also, they don't get checked in terms of marketing email. A support at email, they're going to mark your messages as spam, even if they did use it to sign up for something, because they're not going to want to deal with that volume. That email is to deal with support tickets for the organization and those things like that. So even if it came through legitimately, look at the engagement like we had talked about. Make sure it's not going to harm you.
All right. And we kind of talked about this already, but funky looking emails that will probably come from bots, right?
Yep. And sometimes you'll see that. We've seen patterns with Gmail addresses having a lot of periods in them, because you can format the same Gmail address many different ways with periods, and it'll all deliver to that same address. So that's a good way of flooding somebody's inbox to maybe hide an email from their bank that their account was breached or their credit card was compromised. So those are good indicators. If you collect more than the email address of point of opt-in, which is kind of a good idea for targeting purposes, you may see a lot with bots kind of hashed data. The reason that shows up is usually because the data that's being added to your form has been stolen through some form of breach, and all that's been given to that bad actor was a certain subset of that data, usually the email address. They don't have the correct hash to unlock the rest of the data.
All right. Let's look at what we should be doing. So in the essence of time, I want to try to get through these in a decent max. We got a lot of great questions. It's awesome. And then any questions we don't get to, folks, we'll put it in a blog Q&A style format to help you and other folks, which always is helpful. And again, this webinar will be is being recorded, be on our YouTube channel in case you have to leave a little bit early. But if you have any specific questions, we'll contact you one-on-one if it's something that pertains to your account. So first thing we already mentioned is check your bounce rate, check your unsubscribe rate, see if the thresholds or the levels are going up or down. Down's actually good. Check your complaint rate, how many people are complaining, because then maybe it's your content if people are complaining they're not getting what they thought they were getting, or you're sending to them too often maybe. Encourage engagement, have strong calls to action, have good visuals in your emails. Don't just send to send, and don't sell what you want to sell. You want people to need what you have. I think like a marketer in that aspect. Don't just say, hey, it's Friday, I want to send an email out because I need to sell a widget, right? People are probably not going to engage with that, especially now with a lot of the emails we're getting because of the whole pandemic and everything. And I already elaborated. Look at the design of your emails. Use good catching graphics, use animated GIFs, make sure your emails look great, have a couple of varieties of different templates that you can use, and then do that re-engagement campaign, and that is the next slide. So what we need to be doing is identify your non-openers, look at people that maybe have been on your list for 6 months and haven't opened in 6 months, or maybe you send once a month. You could do it yearly, right? Every year, somebody's been on your list for a year, hasn't opened in a year, you identify them, and then segment them or add them to a specific list so you can target them. And then what you want to do is send are we breaking up type of email, because Brandon, I don't know about you, but somebody's breaking up with me. I want to know why, and I'm going to open that email. Why are you breaking up with me? What did I do? Was it me or was it you? Get them to open and say, hey, we noticed you haven't been opening our emails. Do you still want to get our emails? Click here to stay on our list. Click here not to. And then what you can do is send a second chance email. Hey, why are you ghosting me? Brendan, you haven't opened my email, and I want to know why. I want you to stay in the fold. I need to make money off of you. No, I'm just kidding. I want you to stay on my list, and I want to be able to send you valuable information. And then last is the last chance emails. Here's the divorce papers. It's over. It's final, signed, sealed, and delivered. And at that point, you decide to remove or delete those subscribers. And it's important you do that. If you want to go ahead and just identify these and remove them, I'll pat you on the back as a marketer because not enough of us do that. But if you want to do the 3 and out, that's a great way to do it too. And that is something you can automate. And we're getting questions around that too, but we're going to hopefully get to that. Here's a couple of examples. We hate goodbyes. This is a good one here. So, and then the button says, keep them coming. Should you stay or should you go by Chipotle? They're having a little bit of fun there. And then we got the we miss you from Hygiene. I like this one because it's cute. It's got a dog and it's got a stuffed animal there with the dog. And it's asking you to stay on the email newsletter list. And they're also giving you a discount. So don't be afraid to play around with content, with colors, with discounts to get people to come back and buy something. Because for somebody to really use that coupon code right now, they probably need to remember it, write it down, and then maybe click on a link and use it. And that's a form of engagement right there. And that allows you to keep them in the fold. So remember, quality over quantity. So it's the amount of engaged subscribers you have versus how many you have. I mean, we don't go around comparing email newsletter lists, like Brendan, I have 100,000 email addresses. How many do you have? It shouldn't be a game of how many email addresses you have. It's the quality of what you have. Wouldn't you rather convert more on a smaller list than convert less on a larger list? I would.
Spend a lot less at your email provider.
Right. And just think, if you cut your list in half, campaigners are going to hate me for saying this, but you could probably downgrade your subscription if you have less subscribers. If you have a lot of dead weight on your account, but if you're already doing list hygiene, maybe you can't downgrade as much. But then, more importantly, better results, more deliverability, more conversions because people are actually seeing your emails. You're now fresh and clean. We told you the why and the how. You should have better performing campaigns as of next week because everybody on this call is going to do a list hygiene campaign, right? I'm going to get that. Are we breaking up email? I hope. And then just remember, it's a habit. It's something you need to remember to do or set it with automation so it becomes habitual without you even doing it. It just helps you overall. And with that, we do want to get into the Q&As because there's just so many, Brendan. I hope we can get through a lot of them here. Let me bring up the actual questions. Are hard bounces automatically removed by campaigner from mailing lists after sending? Hard bounces are removed. In other words, if it's an invalid email address, yes, it's removed. Soft, we will keep trying. So as Brendan said earlier, you might want to try to identify someone who's been soft bouncing over time and then try to remove them manually and go from there. And that was a follow-up question. Should you keep someone on your list if their inbox is full? And I guess just relates to what we just said. That's a soft bounce. If you're seeing it 10, 20 times in a row, you might want to remove them, right?
Yeah, I would, if you had the ability to cross-reference the metrics, I would take a look at that contact, how many times it received that bounce code of inbox full. And I'd also look at when the last time they even opened a message was. I mean, if their inbox is full and they opened 30 days ago, maybe hold off on sending for a little bit and then try again and see if they've cleared it out. But if it's somebody that hasn't engaged ever or their last open was like a year ago, you can consider that abandoned at that point.
And somebody's asking if they get a recording. Yes, again, it will be recorded. Catherine's asking, I have clients with Yahoo emails. Why are they not receiving our newsletters?
Can be a lot of different things. So there's a lot that goes into it. Yahoo is one of the larger providers, as part of Oath. They were one of the big pushers of engagement back in 2010, 2012. So it's hard to say. It could be that for a while there's been an engagement issue. It could be that Yahoo isn't liking some of the content of the messages or the URLs of the messages. It could be an authentication issue. There's a lot that could go into that.
Contact our support team so we can help you directly.
That's what I would recommend.
Regine's asking what means hard bounce. That we already mentioned, that's an invalid email address. In other words, it no longer exists. Either it was typed wrong or it was an email address. Maybe I leave the organization and then my IT team cleans up that email address and it's no longer valid.
Yeah, think of a hard bounce as it's no longer active. It will not ever receive email again.
Right.
Versus a soft bounce is, yes, that's still a real inbox capable of receiving messages, but.
All right, Regine says, what does it mean by hard bounce? Again, we went over that. Danielle asks, after your campaign goes out and you get some bounces, should you delete those? Hard bounces, again, they are handled automatically. Soft bounces, you kind of want to monitor. So that answers that question there. Maggie says, what do you consider to be a good read rate? Now, depends on what you mean, Maggie, because a read rate means if I open an email and read it to the bottom, like did I fully read that email? And there are services that actually take a look at that. And then there's the actual open rate. So open rate, 20% is usually good. What you want to do is go to, and it just went out of my mind, smartinsights.com. They actually have metrics by industry. So you can go look at your specific industry and see where you need to be, because some are going to be higher and some are going to be lower. But also, yeah, if you're getting a good open rate, you want to look at, are they actually opening and reading the whole email? But that's what's considered a read rate. So there is a difference between the two. Will you be showing us how to clean our email lists? That's Janine. Theoretically, you can manually do it by identifying people who haven't opened through a segment and then manually do a send. Or you can use the workflow feature to go ahead and set up, a workflow that would automatically send people on a segment that you identify, one email, then another email, and another one. Support team, or if you have a CSM, they can help you with that. But it can be automatically set up to happen if you want it to, or you can manually do it. All right. This is Vicky. Personally, I view my email in the preview section of Outlook. Does that count as opening the message for Campaigner? Well, for any provider, it depends on if you load images, because there's a tracking pixel, which is 1 pixel by 1 pixel, which you probably can never see in an email unless you really, really look for it on a specific type of background, maybe, but you may never, ever see it. If that loads, that means your email is open. So now if somebody blocks images, they will not count as an open. Now, somebody might say, well, why would I want to clean my list? Because there's going to be a certain amount of people that block images all the time. I don't believe that they're blocking every single email, but there might be 0.01% of people maybe on your list that might do so. If you have an email with just a lot of text, and is it like throwing the baby out with the bathwater? In a way, yeah, but that's why you want to do a re-engagement campaign, because then they're going to say, I've been opening these emails, and hopefully it'll let you know. We work our soft and hard bounces constantly. Why do some emails end up in these categories when it shows that they are opening, sometimes as recently as that same day? That is interesting.
Yes. It would be interesting if that would happen with a hard bounce. That's a non-existent address, so it shouldn't be able to record. It's never delivered anywhere. The difference with the soft bounce is that soft bounces are temporary because it's a good inbox. We've seen issues where a message soft bounced for a temporary reason, server busy, routing error, and then within 20 minutes, that contact recorded and open, which means the initial server response was, oops, we can't take it right now. And then whatever that issue was temporary. And most email providers, good ones, I know Campaigner does this, I'm sure as well, will reattempt delivery on a soft bounce like that a couple of times throughout maybe a 24-hour period, depending on how they're set up. So temporary bounce, another delivery attempt occurs. So you can have a successful delivery after an initial server response of temporarily unavailable.
And Kim has a similar question, but it comes to, hey, one time an email was rejected by a spam filter. However, later than the day they open. There are times temporary blocks of the IP addresses that Campaigner sends from, and we constantly work those. And then something will happen, or your domain might be blocked, and all of a sudden it's not blocked. So it could be domain or IP related. And I've actually learned that from Brendan.
There could be other factors, external as well. Maybe that domain is experiencing a ton of incoming volume at that time, and it just can't handle it. So they're going to defer some of that traffic for later. You see that a lot at smaller providers and regional kind of telecoms. Not any of the major free inbox providers, because their systems are very robust, but some of the smaller networks or even business domains and things like that, you can definitely see that.
A lot of great questions, folks. Colleen asks, what's the difference between a spam complaint and a hard or soft bounce?
A spam complaint is the recipient taking action in their email client and marking the messages spam or junk. Whether it is really spam or junk to them, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. A lot of folks will use that button, like you said, in the Gmail statistic. They use that button because they know when I click that, I'm not going to get that message anymore. They don't care about, the back end things that are going on in terms of the damage that can do to the sender. It's, I don't want this message. I know what this button does. It's quick and easy and I'm done. So that is a spam complaint is a user generated piece of feedback. negative feedback, unfortunately. Whereas a bounce is a server response. It's a machine saying, we can't accept this for this reason.
So Brandon, do you have a meeting at the top of the hour?
I do, yeah,
All right, well, I'm
unfortunately.
going to keep going, folks. If you could stay, that'd be great. But I see a lot of common questions and related questions. We'll definitely get those into the Q&A. But if you want to stick around, I'm going to continue answering these because I like to do so and I have time to do it. As Amanda's asking, is there a feature where you can see a summary of these items? Yes, it's in a reporting section. If you log in, reporting, email campaigns, or wherever area you're looking at, you'll see a lot of this information, bounced complaints, unsubscribes, and all that. To be sure I understand, Vicky asked, the email going to a spam folder registers as a soft bounce. No, it does not. Basically, what we were talking about, I think what you're relating to is Gmail. If somebody marks a message as spam, it'll just go to their spam folder and never be read by them. They'll never see it unless they go to the spam folder, but it doesn't register a bounce at all. All right. If your emails are going to spam or junk based on past performance as a sender, are you forever banished to spam hell forever? That is awesome. An awesome question. That is from Paul. Think of it like a credit score. When you send an email, it's being graded. In other words, the positive things that happen to open, the clicks, the forwards, mark as important and tins. This is not spam. If they actually go into the spam folder and pull it out, you're actually getting good engagement. You're showing, say, Gmail that you're relevant. You're a relevant sender. Then the bad things like bounces, unsubscribes, complaints, and the ignoring of your emails bring your credit score down. So think of it as working your credit score. Make sure the good things are happening to raise your credit score, your domain reputation, versus the bad things. And we've seen clients that come to us and they have a bad sender reputation, and we help them over time and do things by sending less emails in the beginning, target your emails, get that engagement rate open, and then over time it starts to improve. Aaron says, does the campaigner automatically discontinue sending to hard bounces? Yes. We remove hard, not soft. Andre asked the same question. Colleen, we already got to that one. Do we remove? Yes. Is there a central place where we can see all of our hard and soft bounces again in the reporting? Do we have a quick reference sheet for soft bounce codes and their meanings? Vicky, that's a great question if you're still on. There are codes 400 and 500. Normally 400 is soft bounce, 500 is hard bounce. Now there's variants 5.2, blah, blah, blah. So it's different types, and the recipient server can determine what type and then also the verbiage that goes back. In other words, this email does not exist versus this is an invalid email address, or they can simply just say if it's a soft spam related issue, we don't like your kind around here, we will not accept this email. We see some funny ones, but it's all into bounce diagnostics, which you should analyze and take a look at. I'm looking at my last report, saw soft bounce was 175 out of 4807. I clicked on soft bounce and it brought me to customer email info, but not why it bounced. I'll have to get back to you on that one around the details on that one. That's from Susan. Quickest way to clean up an email list: identify your non-openers and delete them. I know you don't want to hear that. That's the cleanest way. The alternative way is send a couple emails to them, see if they engage, or run a workflow that automatically does that for you, then automatically removes them from the list. The beauty is you can always add them back. Why use CAPTCHA on your form if you're using double opt-in? Double opt-in works too. CAPTCHA captures them at the front. It validates them there. And then even if you do double opt-in, it actually protects you even more. But if you don't use CAPTCHA and you're using double opt-in, that does help you. And another question from Maggie around Gmail. Does a spam complaint translate to a soft or hard bounce? No, they are separate. Just remember that. You do not have to delete anybody in hard bounce status because you're not going to email them to you. We will not allow you to, or we help you by not letting that email go out. A lot of the same questions here, hard and soft bounce. How do I check my email sender reputation? Now, what that's tied to is your domain and the IPs you're sending from. So since say you're using Campaign or another provider, it's hard for you to know what your sender reputation is because you're using a different set of IPs. If you used solely your IPs and your domain, it's easier to find out. But just think about it as if you have a credit card and you're looking at your credit score. Obviously, you can get the reports for that, but just, are you paying your bills on time? You know, anybody that you co-sign for, are they paying the bills on time? All those things. Are you doing the right things to make sure your credit score is high? Same thing with email. Are you doing the right things? And are your open rates healthy? That's really what you want to look at. And we could probably help you determine if you have a good or bad sender reputation. Jill asks, I work for a larger employer and want to see emails. We send emails to all of our fellow employees. Technically, we have the same employer and we're able to email them without, it just depends. Are they mandatory emails? In other words, do they need to or have to get those emails? Then maybe it's okay. But if it's kind of promotional, I'd stay away from doing that because they can mark it as spam, right? If an email is labeled campaign as hard bounce or soft bounce, will we attempt to send hard bounce? No. Soft bounce? Yes. Somebody saying I have a certain amount of people opening and then others not opening. And this is Susan. What do I do about the 4,000 that are not opening if there's a list unopened? So what you want to do is create a segment of people who haven't opened X amount of time in X amount of days, and that'll help you determine your dead weight. This way you can decide whether you want to delete them or if you want to try to do a campaign. Again, from Sarah, how to identify non-openers, segmentation. Our automated list cleanup process is Duina's asking that. How are they removed? So basically, by using, say, a workflow, you can send an email, wait 3 days, send another email to people who didn't open the first one, then send that third, or the divorce papers email to people who didn't open the first two, and then automatically remove them over a period maybe of 10 days, 2 weeks, or whatever you want. And Kim is saying, thoughts on internal report a spam button? I've heard of people having this inside the campaign so that clients are more likely to hit this button. I would say it's a good idea to have the unsubscribe link at the top of your email too. If you think people are using the spam feature rather than unsubscribe, you can always put an unsubscribe link at the top of your email. Where do I find an unopened email list? That's through segmentation. How reputable are the email list cleaners out there? Carrie asks. They're not as accurate as they used to be. There's been a lot of changes in how that reporting is done now, especially with like what we call oath, like Yahoo. It's hard to determine if they're valid or not. A lot of these list cleaning services will say, we think it's valid. We don't really know, but we think so. And the ones that they deem are valid, yeah, they're valid. But there's just so many unknowns in there. I would say that it's a good place to start, but it's not something that you should wholly trust in. Laura says they are a membership organization, understand a non-opener issue, but when you remove non-openers from the list and then send a really important email, we suddenly get a complaint, I didn't get it. You need to make sure that somehow you're reaching out to these people and you're telling them it's important for them to engage with that email. If it's something that they have to get and they're complaining they're not getting it, they have to work as a group or they have to work as a subscriber group to help you, right? It's just be honest, explain to them, say, by people ignoring our emails and marketing as spam or unsubscribing, it's actually hurting us. We feel what we have is valuable and important. Can you help us by engaging with our emails? That's why you always see a lot of times the welcome email says you might want to look for our email in the spam folder, right? Because they want people to go in there and pull it out. More folks asking if we're recording this, role addresses, sales at, marketing at. The danger there is if I sign up with marketing at and I'm working for a company and then I leave, somebody else takes over and they get an email from you, say next week, I might say I never signed up for this and I'm going to mark it as spam or unsubscribe, right? That's why it's better off to have an actual email address. Hard bounces and soft bounces are still on my contact list. Should I remove these? That's from Vanessa. You don't have to remove the bounce. They're just there to let you know that it is hard bounce, and it's probably good just to leave them there. You could delete those if you want to. Soft bounces, again, you want to look at the history of them, see if it's worth deleting them or not. We have a previous webinar. It's on YouTube about automation. This is for Douglas, about using automation, especially probably for list hygiene is what you're talking about. But yet it's something we can't really go into now because there's a lot behind there, but we'd be happy to give you a demo of that. Just reach out to us as well. And Virginia's asking, do we have a report of emails, people that haven't opened emails? That is the segmentation. And is there an automated program that weeds out non-responsive email addresses that we can use so that we can use in Campaigner? And that's Virginia. I would just say if you're using Campaigner, just use the segmentation to identify those non-openers. Do soft bounces turn into hard bounces? No, they do not. We used to do that, but we no longer do that because there are times where an email box can be full for a few days, and if you send to them each and every day, you can hit that 5 really quickly. A lot of the similar questions around, hard and soft bounces. Somebody that works with an EDU, college email addresses mostly, good engagement. Sometimes the school students population starts to drop. Is there anything we can do to fix mostly the school's email team to make sure they're coming through correctly? Yeah, just hopefully they're the EDU that you're emailing to, they set those emails to bounce so that they automatically get removed. But if it's happening a lot, you might want to look into other ways of cleaning that list. Brenna says, we feel our open rate is slim to none. I just to correctly go through by cleaning my inbox and make sure all emails are accurate. Yes, it will help your open rate. That's one thing. But more importantly, it's your list acquisition process. It is the frequency you send, it's the content you send, it's the visuals or the message of what you're sending, your call to action, and also many other things that are happening. But getting into the inbox is domain reputation, and that's where list hygiene comes in. But also look at all facets of your email campaigns. Would I consider a good open rate from Catherine? 20% is usually okay. 5% click rate. Again, look at smartinsights.com for industry specific data. We have seen the hard bounce situation a lot. I'd love to know about that, Carrie. Hopefully it's not something that's always going to be a challenge for you, but it just depends on what you mean by that. Questions just keep coming in. This is great. I still have a good amount of people on. I'm going to keep going if that's okay. In Apple Mail, there's an unsubscribe feature that defaults to role email address like unsubscribe a domain. Are there plans for campaigners to sync this feature? Typical unsubscribe form. I think that relates to the feedback loop, and we need to have a valid feedback loop for us to be able to remove them. Unsubscribe at domain.com. So it also depends on the recipient or the sender too, how they're set up. I'll look into that one, Maggie. That one's something I need to do a little research on. Good percentage for opening emails. Susan asked. I already mentioned that. Many people I know tell me that their Gmail address is for their junk mail. And I have 4 Gmail addresses. I have a Yahoo, I have an AOL. I use one for promotional, and it's true. But I do go back and I do engage with companies that I like to get emails from. And that is the truth because Gmail has a really good algorithm, and that's why you really need to pay attention to your domain reputation. How do you find out what your sender reputation is? Catherine asked, I already said that. It's kind of not something that's easily obtainable as far as like a credit score, but you just should know what that is. And if you have a CSM account manager or maybe support can help you identify if you have a good or bad reputation. Is there a good session on best practices for segmenting and lists? I think we do have a previous webinar on that. If not, we probably should do one soon. Just looking through to see if there's any other good ones here that have not been answered. How do you set up a workflow? We do have a previous webinar on that. I would say take a look on our YouTube channel. An email bounce. So do soft bounces turn into hard bounces from Aaron? No, they don't, not automatically. What is segmentation? Where can I find that? So that's under list and segmentation. We're getting a lot of thank yous. Is there anything specific to keep in mind to avoid being caught in the Outlook spam folder? So Outlook has their spam folder, and then they have their, there's another feature that's escaping my mind. It's like for later, it's kind of like quasi spam. So you need to send emails that are relevant. You want people to mark you as a safe sender. You want them to engage with your emails. That's really the only way. Can we change an IP address? I'm guessing, Nora, you're asking if can you change the IP address you're sending from, if it's from Campaigner. If you have your own server, theoretically, you can probably change out your IP address. But with us, we use rotating IP addresses just to make sure everything's on the up and up. You could use a dedicated IP, but then you're solely responsible for everything that happens on that domain. And if you ever get blacklisted, it's so hard to reverse that. I would just say, don't worry about the IP address, because that really is a small part of your sender reputation. Your domain reputation is the most important thing you need to worry about. Duplicate email cleaners. I would just use Excel and use the remove duplicates. Cleaning.edu from Tracy, edu addresses, parsed by university. I'll have to get back to you on that. I want to read through that and make sure that I have the right answer for you. You can see previous webinars on our YouTube channel. Just search for Campaigner on YouTube. This one will be there in a few days. Is Campaigner good for a political campaign? We can be, yes. It really depends on the content you're going to send out, because with political campaigns, it's kind of tough to get a lot of engagement. Yes, I'd say we're good as long as you're doing all the best practices for email marketing campaigns. All right. And there's one last question on quarantine, but I don't know what that pertains to. But I think I got through all the questions, and there's still a healthy amount of people on. I hope this was very helpful, and we answered a lot of your questions, and I hope that helped you specifically if you asked one. The most important thing you can do is make sure you're identifying people who are not engaging with your email. You're bringing in valid email addresses and identifying ones that actually go bad, that are no longer delivering. This way you have better inbox placement, more engagement. More importantly, your open rates go up, and then your ROI is a lot better. You're spending the money on an email platform. You want to make sure you're getting results for it. And we're just getting some thank yous. So that's it pretty much. I know I'm about 13 minutes over, so I appreciate you staying with me, those who did. And if you're catching a replay right now, welcome back and happy marketing, folks. And we'll see you in the next one.